Welcome to Mse, the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association, for our 2022 Season of Sustainability and Renewable Energy presentations. Mse is a 501c3 nonprofit grassroots organization made up of volunteers dedicated to educating and engaging the public in advocating for renewable energy production, energy efficiency, and sustainable living. We encourage you to listen, ask questions, experiment with what you learn, and help others become more sustainable. I'm Phil Jones, tonight's host. This is our 9th meeting for the year. We will be back the last Tuesday of every month through October. We take November and December off to continue our presentations on renewable energy and sustainable living. We post presentations and registration links on our website at www.themarea.org, where you can also add yourself to our mailing list to receive our email reminders. Tonight, we're presenting municipal waste processing powered by wind, solar, and composting, putting it all together for a sustainable future. Before we get started, we would like to share our online renewable energy and sustainable living coming attractions live the last Tuesday of each month. Join us October 25th for Solar Inspiration. October is our traditional do-it-yourself or DIY monthly meeting at Mse. It is a meeting where our members and audience share the experiences and lessons learned from installing solar panels on their homes, composting, experimenting with hemp building blocks, electrifying their cars, or other adventures in sustainable living. We learn from each other. Behind the Mse mission and driving it forward over the last 16 years was an individual who was constantly pursuing adventures in sustainable living. He wasn't doing it just for his own edification. He was also persuading others to pursue their own sustainable living adventures. Bill touched and motivated so many people to pick up a tool or a career or a lifestyle. As a result, many of us found ourselves pursuing paths we would not have expected and are now very grateful we did. Bill passed away at the beginning of this year while still moving at full speed forward. This month, we want to celebrate the sustainable living pursuits Bill inspired, facilitated, coached, and taught the Mse family and beyond. Come to find your sustainable living tool, career, or lifestyle in our October meeting, brought to you by Bill. And now we'd like to introduce our featured speaker for tonight. Chuck Coe will introduce him.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Matthew DeNafo, who is the Vice President of the Centralized Maintenance and Asset Management at the Atlantic County Utilities Authority. Matt joined the organization in 2007 as an associate engineer and was promoted to a senior engineer, and then now has the current role of being the Vice President. In his current role at the authority, Matt is responsible for managing centralized maintenance and asset management for all divisions of the authority. He provides strategic and tactical leadership in addition to assisting with project development and management. And he does all of this while he's overseeing 50 employees. Quite a feat. Matt graduated from Rowan University and College of Engineering with a degree in civil and environmental engineering, went on to earn a master's degree in environmental engineering from Rowan and a master's in business from Rutgers. He is a New Jersey licensed professional engineer and is a certified municipal engineer. He's on the board member of the Solid Waste Association of North America, New Jersey's chapter, Vice President of the Waterford Township Board of Education, and sits on the advisory board for the Atlantic County Institute of Technology. He's a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers of New Jersey, Water Environmental Association of New Jersey, and the American Public Works Association. And with all that, he still has time to come and share his wisdom with Mse. Matt, it's a real pleasure having you this evening.
Chuck, thank you very much for having me. Quite an introduction. As you were sitting there kind of giving my introduction, I'm getting my presentation prepared. I have to confess, 2.5 years after COVID, this is actually my first presentation virtually. So I'm used to being on stage, moving around a lot. I got the Italian last name, so moving my hands, you can't see all that, but hopefully I stay in the screen and you can hear me all right. So without further ado, I'll get the presentation kind of running. Just a sec. All right, just want to confirm everybody can see that. My screen.
There we go.
All is good.
All is good. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for having me this evening. As Chuck said, I work for the Atlantic County Utilities Authority. Have worn many hats here. I've been here for about 15 years. My background is in engineering, but I moved into the maintenance side of things. So 10 years in project development, and now I'm kind of seeing the operational side of things. And when engineers do things wrong, I get to kind of live with it now. So it's a fast learning. I get to kind of point the finger at the other engineers. But that's been kind of my role here for the past 5 years or so. The presentation tonight, I'm going to kind of go through a bit of an overview of the organization for those of you that don't know who we are or what we do, and try to take you a little bit on like a virtual tour of our different facilities and processes and what we do. And then I'll kind of get into some of the renewable initiatives that we've instituted over the course of the past 15 to 20 years, and then the projects that we're working on now that we're excited about developing in the future to kind of continue our progressiveness in the industry. So just a quick, mission statements are always important, but the one thing that sticks out of our mission statement that has kind of kept me here for the past 15 years is that the ACUA has been known as an environmental leader, and we're continuing to use new technologies and innovations and employee ideas. So a lot of these things that we'll talk about in this presentation, when it comes to innovation or sustainability, have really originated from employee ideas, serving on different boards and networking with people, but really comes from within the organization. And they're always something that's not just sustainable, but also cost efficient and providing that high quality, which usually you don't see. You don't see cost effective environmental services with high quality. Typically, it's either low cost, low value, or high value, high cost. So I always thought that was very unique about our organization and something that we've always kind of stuck true to. So a little bit about the ACUA. The Atlantic County Utilities Authority is a government entity in Atlantic County, New Jersey. We operate both wastewater and solid waste management systems. We have a full regional collection system and full solid waste site that we'll kind of go through each one of those little bit of details. Atlantic County population of 275,000, a little over 500 square miles when you're talking about area wise. In addition to servicing Atlantic County, we also have a satellite office or satellite operation in Cumberland County at the Cumberland County Improvement Authority. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the shared services we do, where we don't just, again, service Atlantic County, but we're kind of branching out into other counties and working through shared services that way. Some of those shared services, so they may be on a government to government level. Most of them are, but again, sometimes they're just within the county. We have everything from a full certified lab, street sweeping services, storm drain cleaning. We're actually doing stormwater cleaning in Longport, which is a town within Atlantic County. We have a fueling station that private entities come to. So the jitney, if you've ever been to Atlantic City and have taken a jitney, they're green. They're run by compressed natural gas. They fuel up at our station. They also have their own station. But we try to really expand on that shared services because that's the most efficient way to do things. Having this individual organization or county or town, do every little thing can be difficult and can be, costly. So shared services are a big thing that we promote. Again, whether it's a school district, a not-for-profit, commercial entities, or, another sister agency in Atlantic County, we try to, work reciprocally and be efficient in that manner. So solid waste, so I'll start there. We have a solid waste site where we manage all the household garbage, recycling, and vegetative waste in Atlantic County. Our solid waste site is located just outside the runway of Atlantic City International Airport in Egg Harbor Township, where we have a transfer station, recycling center, a 100-acre landfill, vegetative compost site, our CNG and biofuel station, and a vehicle maintenance and green wash. It's a 365-acre site. We're bound a little bit by the parkway and some wetland areas. So we're kind of constrained, even though it's a big site. A lot of it is restricted for development. So if you look at that area, you'll see our big kind of triangular landfill area, and then there's a lot of green space in between it, which accounts for a lot of wetlands areas. The amount of waste, so again, we service recycling, we service municipal solid waste, so household garbage, construction and demolition waste, and vegetative waste here. So everything comes through our facility and is handled in different ways. A little over 300,000 tons a year in municipal and C&D waste, bulky waste, and then a little over 100,000 tons a year in recycling material, and that's just for Atlantic County. And then there's a little breakdown of kind of of what that material consists of. So solid waste collections, one thing that's kind of unique for us as a county agency is that we do our own collection services. So you won't find that a lot in other towns. You'll find townships that do it, but not a county agency. So we compete with the private sector in collections, whether it's trash or recyclables or even vegetative waste, your leaves and your grass clippings. We provide services to 24 municipalities, not just again in Atlantic County, but also in Cumberland County as well. And this, is typically a cost savings to townships. Maintaining trucks, keeping a fleet, and staffing is a big challenge, especially in this day and age. And private sector isn't always the cheapest. So whether we are providing a second bid for the private sector to compete against, so that way we're keeping people honest and it's not just one bid, or we're providing the service at a discounted rate for them that's cheaper than what they may get a bid for somewhere else. It always, at the end of the day, comes down to kind of saving ratepayers or taxpayers money. So being a county agency doing collection services for towns is, again, a little bit unique to us. Recycling services. So we have a recycling facility here. It's about 50,000 square feet. In the early 90s, our recycling center was state of the art. By the time I got here in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, that equipment had become completely obsolete. So there was even a banner that said, like, state of the art recycling center. And this equipment had just become completely obsolete. That was just worth what it was in scrap. So in about 2008, we brought in another company. They retrofitted the entire building with $8 million worth of new high-tech single stream recycling processing equipment. And then within the 10 years that passed that equipment started to become, again, obsolete. So about a year or so ago, when recycling markets kind of dropped out, our contract was up with that service provider, and we're operating our processing facility as more of a transfer station, and we're sending it to Tinton Falls, which is a recycler by the name of Mse Recycling. And they have a brand new facility, again, a lot of new technology, artificial intelligence, and optical sorting that makes the process a lot more efficient. So currently we're sending it up to Tinton Falls right now for processing, and eventually we'll probably bring it back at some point once, again, things change a little bit. But it seems like every 10 years to 15 years, this equipment, as technology changes, especially how rapidly it is now, has to kind of go through a rebirth or rejuvenation and replacement. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But it's working out with Mse because they have, again, opened up a brand new facility about a year and a half ago, and we started going there. So all recyclables come to our facility and then get transferred out. Again, this is just a picture of the sorting process that you see at Mse. It looks similar to a lot of other facilities that you see. And then our landfill. So we have 101 acre landfill. One of the things that's pretty unique to us is we're within 2,000 feet of Atlantic City International Airway. So bird strikes are a huge concern. So we're one of the only landfills that we know of in the country or in the world that actually does nighttime landfilling. So our trash is double handled. It's brought into our transfer station during the day. And then an hour after sundown, we have a crew that comes in, loads up these big trailers and now giant hauling trucks that are more off-road worthy, and they bring the trash up to the landfill, and then an hour before sunset the trash has to be covered, and this keeps the birds away. At nighttime the birds are not out, they're not feeding. So when you come to our landfill, it's one of the only landfills you'll see where you don't have seagulls or gulls, a sea of them, over top of the trash. It's a little bit unique to us, but it comes at a cost too. And we've, knock on wood, have been operating that way for 30 years now, and have not had any issues with the airport, because the airport at any point can shut us down if there's an issue with birds. We have a bird biologist that's on 24/7 that monitors and is constantly doing different techniques to kind of keep them away. But again, it's a little bit more unique to us. Our landfill opened in 1992. It opened actually as a construction and demolition waste landfill only because of the proximity to the airport. And then a few years after that, we were testing out this nighttime landfilling. And since then, we've been able to kind of ramp up, and there hasn't been an issue since, I think it was 1994 was when we started to do actually household garbage waste, which is what attracts the birds. Like I said, the landfill's a little over 100 acres. We constructed in cells. We have 11 cells that we build. And I try to explain them as almost like swimming pools. They have a liner system that has multiple layers that allows anytime the rainwater actually touches the trash, it's considered leachate and it has to be treated. So this bathtub that's, the trash is being filled in is lined, and then there's piping in that system that actually pulls out that leachate material and then gets sent to our treatment facility. Under that first liner system, there's a secondary liner system, and in between each one of them, there is a bentonite clay mat. So they used to do 2 feet of clay to kind of keep any kind of punctures or anything going through the landfill from contaminating groundwater. So now they have these bentonite layered mats that they put underneath, and there's 2 of them. There's a primary and secondary system. And if a puncture were to happen, this bentonite clay actually swells up and seals up any kind of potential leak from that landfill section. And like I said, there's 2 layers of this system here. In addition to the landfill, there's also a methane collection system, and then also a cleanup process, because the odors that come out of a landfill are really produced by a hydrogen sulfide. So drywall, wallboard from your house, that quickly converts into hydrogen sulfide. And that's when you go by a landfill and get that pungent odor, like an eggy smell, that's the hydrogen sulfide. So we have a cleanup system that also cleans that as well. We have about 80 or 90 wells, vertical wells, almost like a drinking well, that go into the landfill with a network of vacuum pipes, and they pull it all to through those tanks that are at the bottom there. And then they're either used for gas to energy, which I'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes, or they get flared out, which reduces the greenhouse gas emission by converting it to CO2 as opposed to methane. So one of the projects that we work on as far as extending the life, so I talked about we build things in cells. They're small little, 10-acre cells that they build at a time, is when we've expended all of that flat area, we start looking at these, they're called Mse walls, or mechanically stabilized earthen walls. And you see them a lot on like turnpikes and expressways where, you have an overpass, and it's a way to kind of create a shear wall up. And what we're doing is, if you can imagine a landfill is a big mound, you have a slope that kind of comes down on the outside. If you can build a wall on the exterior of that, you have this cheese wedge of airspace that you're able to capitalize on, which amounts to quite a bit of volume without taking up a lot of space. Again, I mentioned before, we were really constrained by our wetlands boundaries on either side of our landfill. So going wider really isn't an option for us on a 365-acre site. So we have these, earthen walls that we are building that go around the exterior and are taking advantage. Again, I always call it that cheese wedge, which extends, several years of landfill space in our process. The next facility, we have a composting facility. So it's a 10-acre site. So we have our, leaves and grass clippings and clean wood come here. Christmas time, we have these piles that turn a little bit glittery because everybody's kind of getting rid of their Christmas trees, and they leave a tinsel on, or they leave something on there. But it's really a great process. It's diverting material from our landfill, and it's a 6-month process, but all the material is coming in and it's being sorted typically by, grass and leaves. So we try to keep the grass a little bit separated from the other material of like mixed branches and brush, because that's our nitrogen source. And then we have leaves that are, your carbon source. And the staff there is kind of balancing that a little bit. And everything gets thrown into a grinder and ground up and then put into windrows, which you kind of see at the bottom there. And then every about 2 weeks, they're testing it, but they're turning the material over with a windrow turner, which is the second picture in the middle. It looks kind of like a crab with wheels. That turns it and gets the oxygen, so the aerobic process can kind of continue to break down the material. And then after about 6 months, we're able to screen that into a really fine compost material. And that process again starts in about 2 or 3 weeks. We'll start the batch that'll be ready for the spring. So there's already talks of if equipment is down, we're not going to have enough material for the spring because we sell out by May. But this material is sold in bulk, and then we also package it in smaller bags, and we donate stuff to community gardens. But it's a really, it's a great way to, defer material going into the landfill, reusing it. And it's a really great, rich product that we have. So landscapers love it, homeowners love it. And again, it's just a great way to kind of divert waste that's going into the landfill. So that wraps up really our solid waste facility. And then the next facility, so again, we do solid waste and we also do wastewater treatment. So our wastewater treatment plant is a little bit more famous, a little bit more, in the eyes of the public. Our landfill, we don't want the landfill to be sticking out in the public. Nobody wants to see a landfill. So that's always hidden back, behind our environmental part. But when you get closer to Atlantic City, you start seeing the windmills, and that's where our wastewater treatment facility is. So it's designed at a 40 MGD. It's an activated sludge treatment facility, and I'll go through like what that process means for activated sludge. We also have a regional collection system, 60 plus miles throughout the county. And then we operate we process material for 14 municipalities. So there's 23 municipalities in Atlantic County. We process or collect wastewater from 14 of those through our regional system. And that's mainly due because of the Pinelands. So as you move further west from Atlantic City, you get into Pinelands towns, and that's not an area where they are promoting development, so they don't want the sewer extended into those areas. And then we have an ocean outfall, which is a lot of the case with treatment plants along the coast of New Jersey. So just a recap on why we were created as far as managing the wastewater is the Clean Water Act of 1972. You had a lot of individual treatment facilities that were only doing primary treatment. They were disposing into local rivers and bays, and they were really contaminating waterways. So the picture on the left is a great image. We have actually one of these a little bit in a bigger version at our treatment plant when we do the tours there. 1978, you see the red. Those are condemned for shellfishing because of the contamination, and those little dots there are going to be your treatment facilities that you had. So you had a dozen treatment facilities all along the coast that were just doing primary treatment and dumping it into the local bays that people were swimming in. They were harvesting stuff for food, and they became contaminated. So that's really what the Clean Water Act was meant to do, was to kind of get rid of all these smaller little treatment facilities, create a little bit more of a regional system that you can do secondary treatment with, and then you're able to clean up those areas. So the picture on the right is 2020, and you can see things have gotten, everything is, much cleaner now. And the shellfishing is, no longer banned in some of the back bays, actually most of them. But I always think that's a really, cool graphic that you can kind of see, the impact of this is what, this was about, and seeing the change, happen after, 42 years of operation. So our plant went on in 1978. Was being built all through the to early mid 70s. So again, our reach is 14 municipalities. We go as far west, if you're familiar with Atlantic County, Egg Harbor City, which is along the Whitehorse Pike or Route 30, and Mse Landing, which is out by 322 and the Black Horse Pike. Again, that's really our limit because of really the Pinelands and the planned development. Pinelands is not extending sewer into areas that they don't want to develop. So 14 municipalities, and it's here. We have 20 pump stations that we operate regionally. In addition to our own pump stations, we talk about shared services. We service another 80 pump stations that aren't ours. So Egg Harbor Township is one, Linwood. So local towns that we have the resources for and the staffing and the expertise licensing. We offer a shared service through them, and we maintain and operate their facilities as well. So it's a little over 100 pump stations that we actually maintain and operate over the course of a year. The treatment process, like I said, we have 40 mg. It's rated for 40 mg/d. Our average flow is about 28 to 29 million gallons a day. It's a 24-hour facility. Obviously, people don't stop taking showers or washing dishes or flushing the toilet. So, the operation is a continuous process. We do an ocean discharge, and our permit, you're required to remove 85% of the total suspended solids. We're typically in the 95% range. And there's a couple of pictures that kind of show like what the water comes in as when it starts and when it kind of ends. And then there's just a little process diagram here, which is maybe a little hard to read, but if you guys see the slides or look through them afterwards, it really kind of makes it a little bit clear what we're trying to do in that wastewater treatment process. Is we're continually trying to separate the wet end or the water from the solids. The solids could be rags, they could be biosolids, but we're constantly trying to separate those two, and that's really what the process involves. So I'll kind of get into those details as we move along. So again, we have a wet end treatment where we're removing solids, and we're disinfecting, and then we're discharging to the ocean, and then we have a solids end. So as we're removing the solids from the wet end, we're thickening that, we're dewatering it, and then we're actually sending it to a sludge incinerator that we have on site that reduces the volume by about 90%, and then that ash is disposed of in our landfill. The picture is a picture of the influent. So influent is the water that's raw that's coming in from the pipelines. You can see how dark and dirty that is, and then the picture on the right is what it looks like after it's discharged to the ocean and chlorinated. So it's a highly effective process. It's secondary treatment. So you're taking it a step further than it was done in the mid 50s and before 1978 really. So the first part of the process and before even primary treatment is our headworks facility. So it's a building that your materials coming in, and there's bar screens in there, and they sound exactly what they're named. They're bars that act as screens, and they're removing the heavy solids, the rags, the flushable wipes that are not really flushable. They're catching there, and everything else that kind of catches their storm debris that comes in. One thing to note about our facility is we are not a CSO, so we're not a combined sewer, which means our stormwater does not go into the same pipes as our wastewater. So the city of Camden is a combined sewer. So when it rains, the storm drain goes down to the same thing with the sanitary sewer. So you get this volume of water that comes in. However, you still get infiltration from local systems. So when we have flooding along the coast, you still have water that intrudes either through pipelines or through manhole lids. So our design of 40 mg/d, our average is 29, 28. We can get up to 60 mg/d when it rains, and that's really an influx of the rainwater that's kind of coming in. But everything goes through that headworks facility first, and then after that, that's really where the treatment really starts. So it starts at our primary tanks. They're big, giant cylinder tanks, and you have your heavier sludge material that's dropping out of the bottom, and that's being sent over to another process that's thickening it. And then you have the overflow going over a weir, and that's where the solids are scraped off the top, anything that's floating, and then it goes to our next process, which is the biological process, and that's that activated sludge treatment process that we have. And that's really kind of where the magic happens for our treatment facility. And this is our aeration basin. So whenever we do tours out there, I always say it looks like a giant chocolate milk blender, but you never want to get near this water or get in this water. But they're giant square tanks, and what you're seeing here is the tanks are actually being aerated. So the oxygen that is being aerated into the tanks is feeding those microorganisms, and that's the biological process. So these microorganisms are ingesting the nutrients and the solids that are not heavy enough to sink down in the primary process. So as they are ingesting and starting to kind of combine, they get heavier, and then they get to the next process where they're able to kind of settle out. This process is a little bit antiquated. What you're looking at here are some pretty big, giant motors and gearboxes that are just aerating on the surface. We're working on going into a diffused air system that'll be much more efficient. And we're actually talking about a green hydrogen project with this, which I'll talk about a little bit more later in the slides. It's pretty exciting. So again, the aeration process provides a biological treatment, and I'm hoping this video works, but we have a full certified lab that we do our own water testing along with several entities and schools and stuff within our area as well. But I'm hoping this video plays for you guys so you can just kind of see. Probably won't. Oh, it does a little bit. So you can see it move. You can see moving. So these are just the different types of microorganisms when we're talking about the bugs that are in the aeration process, and this is what the lab is looking for. There are good bugs and there are bad bugs, and there's a high population and low population. So the good bugs you want to keep feeding them, but at the same time you don't want the population to explode where they start really eating themselves. So they're constantly trying to balance that and making sure that they have a good population of biological activity in the wastewater sludge. And then of course you don't want the biological process to have bad bugs in it. That's not going to create the same effect that you're getting with the culture in that aeration process. So that's our lab is constantly testing things to see, okay, where is that process at? And then there's different things that the operations is doing to correct one way or the other. So again, we have a New Jersey certified lab that we just do, we do all of our treatment testing, but then we do everything from, Atlantic City, ocean water quality to, local school boards drinking water testing. So it's a 6-day-a-week operation, sometimes 7, depending on if they're grabbing samples. So after our aeration and that biological process, we go to our secondary clarification. And that is almost identical to primary. They're big, giant, round tanks. Again, that biological process is creating a heavier solid that's now able to drop out. That drops out of the bottom of the tank, and then the wet end is falling over the weirs, and that's kind of what you're seeing there, is the weir and the water kind of coming over top of that. The solids that come from the bottom of this tank are now considered activated because there is a biological process to that. So they're either put back into our aeration if we need more population of that bug, or they're sent to our centrifuges where they're sent to other tanks where they're actually thickened up and then blended, and that's where they go to for the incineration. After our secondary clarifiers, that's really the end of the process. We have 2 things here. So the first one is just we're chlorinating it. This is taking out any last little bit of biological, bacteria that's in it. But as far as total suspended solids, like I said, it goes out to the ocean. It is clear water, and is typically over 95% removal of our total suspended solids. And before it actually goes out to the ocean, it's actually stored in the equalization basin, where we're able to then discharge a little bit more evenly, as opposed to the peaks and valleys of wastewater. In the morning time we get heavy flow that comes in because everybody's up getting ready for work. Flows are high, people are taking showers, and then the same thing happens at the end of the day. Everybody's coming home, you're cooking, you're running the dishwasher, you're taking showers, you're running the sink to clean the dishes. So to kind of balance that out, we use an equalization basin. It also helps us during that storm surge too, when our flows can go up to, again, upwards of 60 million gallons a day. It gives us a little bit of capacity at our facility. The discharge of this is sent out right on the border of Atlantic City and Ventnor, off of Raleigh Avenue. It's a 1.5 mile out underground pipeline that gets discharged to the ocean. This is the setup for most of the coast here. So all the wastewater moves from really west to east. The downfall to this is we're pulling, fresh water out of aquifers underground, and we're discharging it to the ocean. So you never really get that water back in those aquifers. So it's a big concern, especially in pinelands where you're depleting a lot of these aquifers. And fortunately, New Jersey is water rich, but I do feel there'll be a time where we're not as fortunate, and we may be in a situation where California and Arizona are, where they're trying to figure out how to reuse a lot more water. We've been big proponents of reuse, and have had several projects almost to the finish line, and then they just kind of get to the point where people either don't want to spend the money for the reuse, or the perception of we're using reuse or gray water to water a lawn, and they're afraid their dog or their kid or somebody's going to be out in that lawn. And it's really just kind of a perception that people need to get over. But at the end of the day, you have a really cheap drinking water. So nobody wants to say, all right, well, I'm going to spend this money on wastewater, not understanding that we're just, again, depleting those aquifers a bit. So we talked about the wet end. Managing the biosolids is really the solids end of things. So again, they settle out of the primary treatment. We accept some sludge from outside other entities. So Cape May County MUA actually brings us all of their sludge, so we handle their biosolids as well. So we're a regional disposal for biosolids, and that's done through our incineration process. Before it's sent to incineration, we are adding polymer, which thickens it up. The drier the material, the more efficient it is to incinerate. So we don't want a really wet material. That's why we're kind of dewatering or thickening. So we use high-speed centrifuges for that, and they seem to be the most effective way to kind of get that material to a dry enough consistency that we're able to kind of, again, not waste a ton of energy on combusting it. We have a multiple hearth incinerator. We're one of 5 in New Jersey. It's got I believe it's eight hearths. Starts from the top and kind of works its way down. And again, it's a 90% volume reduction. Landfilling biosolids in New Jersey is illegal, so there's not really a lot of options that you have. The other one is potentially doing either composting or aerobic digestion, but we are on a 40-acre site surrounded by water on an island, so we don't really have the real estate to do something like composting, and composting comes with its own challenges with odors. We see even with the vegetative waste, the odors when you're breaking that material down can be a significant nuisance for neighbors too. So incineration is what we've been doing since the late 70s, and again, we're a regional depot for a lot of the treatment facilities in the area, because it just is the most efficient way to destroy the biosolids at this point. So now the more interesting part, I think that the group here is interested in hearing about is really our renewable energy and sustainability initiatives that we've had throughout the years here at the ACUA, and then also what we're looking forward to in the future. So the most iconic and the one that is very easy to say, hey, where the windmills are in Atlantic City, that's where I work, kind of thing. That's like my line when somebody says, where's the ACUA at? So just off the coast of Atlantic City, we have 5 wind turbines that were installed in 2005. So a little over 15 years. We're about 18 years into these windmills being constructed and operating. We don't actually own the windmill, so we lease. We did a private partnership, and we leased the land to them, and we purchased the electricity from them. So there's 5 1.5 megawatt GE turbines, total of 7.5 megawatts. The cost to construct was $12.5 million. It was not a single dollar that we spent to construct these. We're able to now benefit, though, by 1, our electricity is being provided through wind, but 2, it's at a cheaper rate too, so there's a significant savings there. We get 60% of our power from the windmills, and our power consumption is about 2 to 2.5 megawatts of consumption. So when the windmills, all 5 of them are running, they're discharging the rest of the grid. The reason it's only 60% is because the wind isn't consistent. So we just got through August. August is probably one of the lowest months when it comes to wind. So you'll see sometimes in August none of them will be spinning. There's also downtime based off of maintenance, but for the most part, we're getting 60% of our electricity from the wind. The cost savings is, like I said, is very significant. So we're getting costed about a fixed rate of 9 cents a kilowatt, as opposed to 13, 14 cents that we'd be getting from the utility right now. And then again, when all 5 of them are running, the company, which is Leeward Energy, is discharging and selling to the grid, but they're selling to the grid at a reduced rate. So they're actually selling probably closer to 5 cents a kilowatt, when they're able to sell to us at 9 cents. So it behooves them, it benefits them to sell more to us. In addition to our wind initiative at the ACUA wastewater plant, we also have a 500 kilowatt solar project that's consists of ground arrays, a couple of roof mounts, and also a giant solar canopy over the employee parking area. 2,700 panels, and it's a small percentage, but it's something. It's 4% of our electricity, and it's, again, depending on the sun being out, we're pulling electricity from that. At this point, this electricity is free. So this project was paid off several years ago through SREC incentives and different federal grants that we got. But it's been a huge savings for us, and again, it just gets passed on down to our ratepayers, and it's a great thing to do, because again, we're using a renewable energy to power our treatment facility. So these are really the 2 big projects at our treatment facility that have paid dividends from us, and both of them went in around the same time, around 2005. So they're getting to that 20-year period. The windmills, we're looking to renegotiate a contract with the existing operator, and what we're pushing for them is to install battery technology, and battery technology will allow us to have more redundancy on the backup power of things, but then again, being able to discharge when the wind isn't working and store and save more money, because when the windmills aren't spinning, we're purchasing electricity off the grid. It'll also help out the owners of the windmills, because they're able to sell it to us at a higher rate than they are able to sell to the grid. So we're looking forward to that in the next few years to hopefully get them to develop some battery storage there. Speaking of batteries, we do have a battery on site. It's New Jersey's first operational storage battery. It's a 1 megawatt. I think it was the largest at the time installed in New Jersey. But the misconception of this battery is that it's being used as storage, and it's not really a storage. They're participating in the frequency regulation market, which is they're taking the electricity in and they're cleaning up the frequency and able to discharge it back onto the grid. And this is kind of helping the grid stabilize and create a little bit more of a cleaner power. And there's an incentive for that through the PJM interconnect system. So we do have a large battery on site, but it's not used for what I would like for it to be used, which would be backup power. So, and then onto our landfill. So I talked a little bit about our landfill gas collection system. We have 80 to 90 wells that are active at any given point. Back in 2006, so again, a lot of this is happening in 2004, 2005, 2006. We installed landfill gas to energy plant. So we were taking that methane from our landfill and we were turning electric turbines to produce electricity for our admin park and the entire landfill solid waste complex. Over the years, we went from 1 generator to 3 generators, and I think we maxed out at about 5.4 megawatts on site. We don't have that amount of load here, so there was a savings on, we got electricity from the landfill, so it powered the entire park, but we also got a revenue share from the private company that installed the generators and maintained them. So again, it was another private-public partnership where they're investing the money, we're kind of benefiting from it, and we're, again, utilizing that methane gas that's coming out of the landfill, reducing odors. So again, it goes back down to just, the biggest challenge in New Jersey is taxes. So if you're able to reduce, whether it be disposal rates or wastewater rates, ultimately you're reducing that tax burden on the taxpayer. So and then the collection of gas that isn't going up through a flare is also reducing your CO2 emissions. So there's always a certain amount that has to go through the flare, and that's more of a preventative maintenance or preventative precautionary, that if the engines were to go down, that the gas was at least being converted into a CO2 as opposed to just a straight methane being emitted. On landfill gas, so last September, we actually shut these generators down, and we're working towards a new project to take this landfill gas and turn it into a renewable natural gas. And I'll talk about that in the future slide, but I just wanted to kind of note that here, that we're changing gears with this project. It worked out really well from us from 2006 to about 2021. And now we're kind of looking for what's the next thing we're going to kind of move towards. Alternative fuels. So we've been a big proponent of whether it be biodiesel, plug-in electric vehicles, and for the heavy duty collection trucks, CNG. So, battery technology is coming along, but for heavy duty Class 8 trucks, it's really, really difficult to find a 600 kilowatt charger to charge a trash truck. We have a fleet of about 80 heavy duty trucks. In 2012, we started to convert them over to compressed natural gas. Cost savings here, significant, and there's a reduction in emissions. So there's diesel particulate filters that are on diesel trucks that we were running. They were cutting down on those emissions. So we ended up jumping ship and going to CNG, which has I think a third of the emissions in comparison to what a diesel truck has. I just want to make sure we have, so we have our Packer trucks, and then we also have a sweeper, and then we even converted some of our smaller trucks, or F-150s, F-250s, we upfitted with CNG. And again, there's a huge benefit to the environment, and there's also a huge benefit to ratepayers and savings. So it makes sense. It's a double positive here, because we're seeing a significant savings, and we really saw that when fuel goes up. So this year, diesel was at $6 a gallon. We were paying just under $1.38 a gallon for CNG. And it's been $1.38 for 3 years now straight. So it doesn't fluctuate. We're able to purchase it as a commodity and lock into a contract. So there's no fluctuation in what is diesel prices going to do this year. We still have heavy equipment that operates off of diesels, which can be a nightmare. But if we had the rest of our fleet, 80 Class 8 trucks also running on diesel, it would be a much, much bigger and significant challenge. Electric vehicles, again, we've always been looking for when those come out. So the fully electric EV Leaf we have plug-in hybrid Priuses. We run these gem cars, which are like kind of glorified golf carts for on-site stuff, and then charging stations. So we've had charging stations at our site for probably close to 10 years. So not just our sites, but also throughout the county, we've been able to install some as well. So kind of developing that network. And they're open to the public, so the public can come here and charge, whether it be at our solid waste site by the airport, or at our treatment facility by Atlantic City. And then some of the exciting stuff that we're looking at is that's kind of like the last part of this project. So that's been the last 15 years, how we've kind of developed some of these new emerging technologies, and how they've not only benefited the environment, and they've proven to be great technologies that work and save. We're now looking for, what's the next generation look like? What is the next step? How do we continue to evolve and be innovative? So the first project that I mentioned a little bit was our landfill gas project. So the economics on gas to energy has been a challenge. So electricity costs have gone down a little bit. The other challenge is landfill gas can be very difficult to run through a engine and not have trouble with operating that engine. So cleaning it up can be a challenge. So last September, when we shut those engines down, we shut them down because we signed a contract with South Jersey Industries, which owns South Jersey Gas, which is the local gas utility, to now take that gas. They're going to clean it up, and they're going to inject it into their pipeline. So they'll have a renewable natural gas, which can also be used for transportation, such as using it to run our CNG trucks, or eventually brought over to our treatment facility and operate our incinerator. So this is something that we've been working on for about 3 or 4 years now. And like I said, we just signed our contract last year. They brought on a contractor and design team within the past few weeks. And now, hopefully by the end of 2023, early 2024, we'll be in operation for our RNG site at our landfill. The community solar project. So solar has always been something that's been, we want to utilize at our landfill. So we have portions of our landfill that are closed. We have about 20 acres that have permanently capped and closed. And we've been constantly trying to figure out ways how to put solar on this and benefit from, using that, again, wasted space that's now going to be there for, 100 years now. And how do we make a beneficial use out of that? So we were able to apply for a community solar project through the BPU. We were actually the highest awarded project as far as ranking, because we were not only on a brownfield, providing a use for the landfill, but we were also providing that electricity that was going to be sent to Pleasantville Housing Authority, which is a low to moderate income. So the project is going to benefit 100% low to moderate income households. So we weren't really benefiting from this. This was more of like a social, benefit to the community. But it made sense for us to do this. We had the space, so we're in developments with that. It's been a bit of a process with interconnection challenges. Grid is strained. And obviously this was all happening during COVID too. So trying to get people to meet and trying to get decisions made was a challenge. So we've finally gotten the interconnection issues squared away. And now we're just working through a couple things with the BPU and some of the incentives for the developer. This will be, again, another third-party developer. They'll come in, they'll invest, several $1 million in developing this, and then they'll offload that electricity. That'll be beneficial to, Pleasantville Housing Authority. They'll get a discount on their electricity. And it'll be a solar. It'll be a much greener supply of electricity. Green hydrogen is another project that we are in the works with. It's a really exciting topic that I just read an article today about. The Inflation Act and how it's really going to benefit the production of green hydrogen. So green hydrogen is hydrogen produced with a electrolyzer and using green energy. So thinking about our treatment facility, we were approached by New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition, which puts a bunch of organizations together to try to, work through congressional grants to do things. So they came to us 15 years ago when we were going to do the CNG project, and we worked with a couple of different organizations trying to get the CNG fueling station off the ground and some trucks. And now they've come to us with green hydrogen. So they want to use our wastewater treatment facility and take advantage of the wind power there to create that green energy, and then take the wastewater effluent and use that to split the H2O into a hydrogen and oxygen molecule. So that project was awarded $3.84 million through the DOE congressional spending. Last March, we got word on that. We're partnering with Roush Clean Tech, which is going to help us with also providing a fuel cell for a truck. South Jersey Industries, which is the local gas provider, they want to look at injecting it into their pipeline, again, to green up their portfolio a bit. And Galileo is the technology for actually creating the green hydrogen with the electrolyzer. And then, so that's where the hydrogen is going. And then there's an oxygen byproduct. And I mentioned briefly a little bit about our aeration process being kind of antiquated, having those big motors and gearboxes and moving to a diffused air. Part of that would also be a direct oxygen injection into that system, so much more efficient. So we're not even using blowers at this point. We're using a byproduct of the oxygen to directly into our aeration process. Again, not having to use big giant motors or blowers to kind of create that air for that aerobic process. So this project is under design right now. We're going out to bid for RFPs for the design of our aeration process. And then Clean Cities Coalition is kind of acting as the lead to kind of coordinate everybody else. EV fleet conversion, we were awarded through the RGGI grant program, a actual collection truck. So they're starting to come to production. We were awarded a little over $400,000 for the really demonstration of this truck. There's more and more that are coming out. It'll have to be used in an LMI, low to moderate income or socially disadvantaged town, which we have a few within close proximity that we do collections in. And we're hoping to get that truck here in late 2023, but my guess is probably early 2024. It also comes with charging system. So we'll install a 2-port 600 kilowatt charging infrastructure at our site. So we'll really be able to kind of test this equipment out and kind of give feedback on, again, the evolution of how that kind of progresses as we move forward. We're also looking to convert a lot of our CNG F-150 pickups to Ford Lightnings. It just makes more sense economically and service-wise. The technology's there now, so we get the range on them. And then we're also working on direct fast charging stations that DC current charging stations that'll be open to the public. So one of the sites is right outside Atlantic City at our treatment facility, which is a tourist area, high traffic volume, but it's going to be, again, these DC fast chargers are, not very prevalent. So they're trying to push them out. So we're going to be installing at least one, maybe two of those in that area that'll be open to the public. And then our biggest project that I've been working on is a waste conversion technology. So landfilling is great, it's cheap, but it's not the most sustainable way to do it. But unfortunately, land masses were available and that's what we're using. But for the past 15 years, we've been researching alternate ways to dispose of our waste to have less of an impact on the environment and the footprint of our landfill. So we're getting ready to release an RFP that would award a contract to someone for some kind of waste conversion technology. When I mean waste conversion, I don't mean incineration. I mean digestion, mechanical sorting, a pyrolysis, even maybe a plasma process, which is much different. The mechanical sorting seems to be kind of the front runner in the way to handle this. And what that is it's almost running your trash through a recycling process. So you're sorting it, you're pulling out all the recyclables. So now you're getting almost 100% recyclable material out of your trash. You're able to break down fiber material and either create a pulp to send to a paper mill, or you're again able to recycle that into recycled paper in another avenue. You're taking organics now and you're throwing them in an aerobic digester, creating more RNG, but again, reducing your total waste reduction, by 80 to 90%, depending on what your off takers are. And there's a lot of changes in materials that are being made with recyclable material. There's a higher demand for it. They're making they're recycling mattresses, or taking a lot of the refuge and doing roofing materials. So underlayment board is a big product. So we're really excited about, again, reducing our footprint and reducing our need for that landfill as we move into the next 25 years of waste disposal, and kind of be the first one in New Jersey to really do that and not say, hey, let's just bury our trash in a hole and collect the gas. It's great. It's the most efficient way to do that. But again, when you're looking at an environmental impact, there's better technologies out there that the U.S. really kind of, in my opinion, needs to get on board with. That Europe is way ahead of us in that respect. So the last couple of things is, community outreach. I think Chuck had come to our facility. We do a ton of tours. So if anybody is in the area, especially in the summertime, we do open house tours. Feel free to shoot, somebody a line. My contact information can be shared, and we can set you up with a tour at any time. We have a drive electric celebration. So again, if you're in the area, we have a electric vehicle car show tomorrow, actually here at our environmental park, where there'll be demos of different EV, smaller vehicles and large trucks, bikes and motorcycles. Some of them you can actually test drive. So we do that every year, and it just so happens that it's tomorrow. Actually started today. There's a virtual one, and then tomorrow's the actual on-site car show. And that's my presentation. So I'll open up to questions. I hope I didn't go too fast, and I hope that you guys found the information beneficial.
Just, Matt, one more plug before you take questions. Isn't there a huge sustainability fair that occurs in the fall?
Yes. So our Earth Day, our famous Earth Day. So that's one of the hats I wear, is organizing our Earth Day festival. But we get upward of 10,000 people here at our environmental park. All sorts of vendors. It's the Sunday after Earth Day. So if Earth Day falls on a Monday or Tuesday, it's that Sunday following officially Earth Day. And it's a great event. Everything from sustainable vendors to tours to the landfill and the recycling center and wastewater treatment facility. But it's really become a really good event for families and people of all types that are interested in environmental issues and sustainability. So that's, look for that in April.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Chuck, and we've had a whole bunch of questions coming in, and Chuck and Joe are going to go through and ask those questions, and then we invite the audience, if they have additional questions, to chime in after that. Go
So the
ahead.
first question, and you may have answered it on part of your earlier presentation, was, do you separate any compost?
Yeah, so all the source separated stuff, grass clippings, brush, leaves, clean pallets, they all go to our compost site. So that all gets processed that way. The organics collection is a little bit more difficult. So separate organic collection is a hot topic right now. The challenge with it is it's always comes down to economics. So if you have to send another crew with another truck out just to pick up, food waste, that can be, again, a cost prohibition with just trying to get that material in. So one of the newer technologies that we're hoping that we kind of secure here includes aerobic digestion of food waste, and being close proximity to the casinos, we can get some of that source separated waste from the food waste from the casino. So that would also come here and be taken out of that waste stream. It's right now being sent to the landfill, but as far as vegetative waste, everything comes in kind of source separated.
Okay. And a second question along those lines is, when did bentonite clay start being used?
So our first two cells that were built in 91, 92 were done with 2 2-foot layers of clay. And then the bentonite clay was being kind of developed and tested then. And I want to say it was right around the late 90s, early 2000. I want to say 2001 may have been the first landfill cell that we have that was actually used the bentonite clay. So you went from 2 feet of clay to maybe a 1/4 inch layer mat that was again developed over that time and proved to be just as efficient as the 2 feet of clay, but it saved 2 feet of airspace across a 100-acre site.
Interesting.
The next question is, what's the most problematic waste you get in the landfills?
I'd have to say wallboard. C&D and wallboard. C&D doesn't like to compact very well, and then when you have a high concentration of drywall, you get the odors, you get the hydrogen sulfide. So after Superstorm Sandy, there was a lot of teardowns in the area, a lot of wet drywall. We had odor issues for probably a year to 2 after all that material went in so quickly and wet. We had significant odor issues. We're really trying to kind of react to how do we collect this, and it was really a result of the wallboard and the drywall that's in there that quickly goes to hydrogen sulfide.
Calcium sulfate.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And mattresses. So as the maintenance guy, I'm in charge of all the heavy equipment stuff, and mattresses don't compact, and the wires and springs just get wrapped up into drive shafts and final drives and just wreak havoc on the equipment. So we try to recycle them. We actually have a company that comes in, we store them in the back, and they break everything down from the wood wire to the fabric at their facility and recycle them. So we try to pull those out.
So I guess you used the term greenwashing somewhere in your presentation. One of our participants is asking for a definition of greenwashing.
So I guess there's probably several definitions of greenwashing. I kind of see it as someone kind of proposing or selling something as being green, and it really isn't. So for instance, we had someone come through, there's the bag ban in New Jersey now. And we had somebody trying to push to say, well, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do a separate collection for plastic bags so we can recycle them. These bags are so difficult to recycle. They foul up the recycling process. The materials that are in them are very difficult. That thin film, that would be something that in my mind would be greenwashing, is being able to say, hey, this is something that is beneficial and is green, if you will. And really, it's not accurate information.
Okay. Joe, you want to get to the next one?
Sure. Does rainwater ever overpower your system?
Yes. Yeah, and that's both the landfill and the wastewater treatment facility. So fortunately, we have capacity. When we see storms coming, we're able to kind of prepare for that. We lower our equalization basins. We have more retention time. We may put another tank online to, again, help us weather that storm a little bit. But yeah, it's a significant issue, and we're a regional system, so every town kind of has its own collection system, and that's really where the issue lies, is those older systems. Atlantic City, Pleasantville, the coastal towns where, you know, the pipes may be connected. They really pose a challenge, and we don't really have much control over that. They pay for it as a ratepayer, but it's really their system that ends up becoming the bigger issue, and that just kind of, again, everything kind of flows downstream to us.
Okay, Catherine, we may need some clarity around this question, but the question is, why use air versus water as a medium for biological activity? I'm not sure I understand that.
So I think of it as like a fish tank. You know, the fish are absorbing the air from the water, and a lot of times you got to put a little aerator in there because the water can be, you know, deprived of oxygen if you don't, you know, if you don't aerate it, or there's, you know, algae growing on the top of it. It kind of starves that water. So that's really what we're doing, is we're keeping that biological process, those bugs in there that are feeding, that need that oxygen to survive, air. So that's really just, again, it's part of that living organism's need to survive.
I'm not sure what part of the presentation this refers to, but what is the thickening polymer made of?
So
Watering of the biosolids.
yeah, so our wastewater treatment facility, they're called flocculants that you know, create that sludge that kind of drop and allow it to thicken up. The exact polymer, there is all sorts of formulas of different polymers, but we use a dry polymer. It's a pelletized polymer that we end up mixing batches up, and then injecting that into different areas of our treatment process. But I don't know the exact name. Like I said, we have a polymer expert that comes in and helps us when, you know, different seasons change. The solids may change, you know, in the winter time because the temperatures are colder as opposed to summertime. So we actually bring a guy in that helps us with a little bit of trying something new or different, and helping us with settling through flocculants, which is, you know, again, we use polymer, but it's a dry polymer. There's dry polymers and there's, you know, liquid polymers.
The next one's interesting. Thinking of the future, what are your thoughts on residential composting toilets?
If you're open to that, you know, I think that it could work. But I think, you know, having I think a more efficient way to do that is to send it through either you know, maybe having an on-site gray water system where you're able to recycle that water and not necessarily compost that toilet, but maybe the whole house, because then you're getting the shower, you're getting the dishwasher, you're getting the sink, and you're able to reuse that water on a local, you know, treatment, I guess, facility, and then just have that run through your toilets or your irrigation or things that are, you know, non-potable. So I think having a bigger scale as opposed to just the toilet is probably a little bit more efficient. And then looking at a bigger scale, you know, a treatment facility, you know, there's certain things that we can do and try to do to make it a little bit more, you know, sustainable. So part of that waste conversion process is an aerator, excuse me, not an aerator, a digester. So the thought would be, we don't have the land area at our treatment plant to process solids. So maybe we shut down our incinerator, because again, there's certain emissions that, you know, result from that. So is there a better way to handle those solids? So maybe we bring that material over to our solid waste complex, and we have some digesters that are actually, you know, dedicated for our wastewater biosolids too. So, so I think it has a place, you know, depending on where you're at in the country. But I think looking at more of a bigger system, whether it be a household, you know, system that treats your whole house, or more of a regional.
Do you charge the public to use your charging stations for electric vehicles?
We do not. So it's a deal here. So you'll see people that'll be parked out. There was some stipulation that we had that was a bit of a hurdle for us to actually charge. So we just kind of left it open to the public, and it really isn't that huge of a draw for us where we see, like, you know, a huge spike. We're charging our pool vehicles, you know, at times too. But when we move to the DC fast chargers, they will be, you know, an app-based payment setup. So we will have to charge them. Those chargers are, you know, in the depending on how big it is, you know, they can be over $100,000 just for those chargers. That, you know, when you get over 180 kilowatts, we're just looking at some pricing. So they're pretty pricey compared to the level 2 chargers that we have.
So how much of the landfill waste is food waste?
I'd say probably 20 to 30% is probably some type of food waste, or again, material that can be pulled out and probably utilized in another way a little bit better. I think it's 30% here. I think that's what we have on our waste composition study.
Lots of thank yous here, Matt. Lots of thank yous. Great
Oh, yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, lots of nice comments in the chat. One other question was, can you share the name of the company that recycles the mattresses?
Yes, it is called, I have actually on my board, that's why I'm looking it over. It is called cjpgroup.net. And I think they're out of North Jersey. So, and they have a pretty, I don't know if you can see it, but I can share that. But again, it's C as in cat, jpgroup.net. And they turn the wood into mulch. They turn the foam pads into carpet padding, and then they the steel that comes out of them, they actually recycle them into new steel. So it's a and being close to tourist casino area, springtime, fall time, there's a lot of hotels that are bringing in giant roll-off containers just full of mattresses. So it's sometimes easier to kind of pick those out too.
Interesting.
How cost prohibitive would it be to introduce tertiary wastewater treatment so that the water can be returned to the aquifer?
So it would be costly. However, it may be coming there, so we've talked about trying to do like some, deep well injection, just again, not to be discharging our effluent out to the ocean and kind of losing that. And then also kind of helping, we don't really have a salination issue here. Cape May does, being a peninsula, but again, it would help that as well. But it probably would be pretty expensive because you're looking at a significant change in your process. But one of the things that may be changing that is PFAS. So you may be hearing a lot about PFOS and PFAS. It's the forever chemical in nonstick pans and fire retardant stuff and makeup and stickers and all sorts of stuff. The big challenge right now is it's in everything. It's in our bloodstreams, it's in our water. But where do you treat that? Do you stop the manufacturers from using it, which you can do, but how long does that take to get out of the consumer stream? And eventually it either ends up in the landfill and then is transmitted into the leachate, which then ends up at the treatment plant. So there may be a requirement for a much higher level of treatment when it comes to, if they decide that the wastewater treatment facilities or the landfills need to treat their wastewater for PFAS, and that goes into looking at an RO system or different technologies. There's not a lot out there that actually get rid of them, and then what do you do with the waste once you have it? But that would certainly ramp up the treatment level if we have to get to that point.
I don't see any others there. Chuck, do you?
I don't. I have a comment though that the uniqueness of having a source and a need for the oxygen for the aeration of the bacteria and the water treatment, and a need for the hydrogen from making, running an electrolyzer with electricity from the turbines and having it all on one site. And actually, in order for the electrolysis to work, you need fresh water. Mm-hmm. So, taking and diverting, instead of putting the fresh water in the ocean, actually having two valuable uses for both ends of the molecule is really exciting.
It is. And the fact that we got the funding for it as a concept through congressional earmarking has been great, because that's typically the hardest round. So we'll do all the design, we'll get everything kind of ready, then we'll go back for more funding. And like I said, hydrogen has just been, green hydrogen has really been a hot topic right now, especially with the windmills being proposed off of the coast. they really see that as a future energy storage source with fuel cells.
Absolutely.
So this would be kind of that demo, but again, it would be a huge benefit for us because it's a one-stop shop. You know, it's the supply and the demand that we need.
And I was just listening to the infrastructure Inflation Reduction Act that has this huge clean energy piece in it. And within that, there's a big production tax credit for green hydrogen.
Yes.
It's like $3 a kilogram. It really is a game changer.
And they were talking about, you know, getting the cost of that green hydrogen down to, you know, $3 a kilogram. So they were even, you know, talking about being a negative cost with all these incentives that are kind of being released, which again, that really helps, you know, some of this technology that, you know, you get into these debates with people that are concerned with, you know, subsidizing, but you'd be, you know, hard pressed to find something that isn't subsidized, you know, in this day and age. You know, it was, you know, nuclear plants, you know, years and years ago, and it was coal, it was everything. But you know, you really need that to kind of get that moving. And if you look at solar, I think that was a good example, and we're starting to kind of ratchet down a little bit on some of those incentives, but it's not like it was in, you know, 2005 when you were getting 70% rebates on your solar systems, because the market now has kind of matured and you're getting, you know, economies of scale as far as producing materials and stuff. So that cost is being driven down, and that kind of really, you know, helps kind of really innovate, you know, with new technology.
Thank you so much, Matt. Are there any questions from the audience? Want to unmute to ask a question? We have a couple more minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, Phil, I'll turn it back to you.
Just wait for a minute for any questions. Okay, well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing. It's remarkable how much is going on. I mean, it's a very complicated process and a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that initiatives that are just, you know, amazing, the steps that you've taken. And we wish everybody else was in the wastewater world was doing the same. But it's great to have a leader out there. I toured your facility, oh gosh, 10 or 15 years ago, your wind turbine facility, and it's just great to see what you've done in on all facets. And today was just another big eye opener on all the different programs that you've initiated, and all with the idea of environmental and cost, and, you know, doing the sustainable right process. So really applaud your efforts and your work, and we wish you the best going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and, you know, hope that everyone has gotten something out of it. And again, if my contact information is there, so if anybody has any follow-up questions or, you know, information on, you know, vendors or anything, you know, feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month on October 25th.